Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, hi, my name is Carrington. If you enjoy book content, makeup content, make sure you guys have definitely hit that subscribe button, click the little bell so you're notified of all my future uploads, and let's go ahead and let's dive on into today's video where I'm going to be telling you about my favorite book that I have read every single month and my least favorite book that I have read every single month from January through September. So if you guys are wanting to see what I thought was the absolute best every single month, then definitely keep on watching. So let's go ahead, let's start it off with January. So in January, my most favorite book for that month was going to be Jar of Hearts. This was really good. This follows a woman whose best friend died 16 years earlier, and she claims, for the longest time that she had no idea what happened until then it's discovered that her friend's body was found in her backyard. And so now all the pieces came to light. She was arrested, she was sent to prison, she's now released, and now that she's released from prison, really creepy things are happening. Her ex-boyfriend that she had when she was 16, who was a little bit abusive and should not have been dating a 16-year-old because he was way older than that, has some secrets to be revealed. He was put in jail as well because it was determined that he had done most of the murdering. She was an accomplice. And now that she's out, there's more women are dying, and they all seem to be tied to this man who has escaped from prison. And I forgot to add that he has escaped from prison. And so now she's in fear for her life while she's trying to figure out what's happening and how to stop him. It was a really, really good book. My least favorite, however, is going to be this book called In Her Head. I bought this because I love supporting new authors. I just do. I'm here for it. Okay. I just think it's so fun to support new authors. And so I was wanting to support this new author, and I do know that it was her first book, so don't get me wrong, I do think it was still a really decent book, especially for your first time when you're not really for sure what to expect. But there was just a lot of grammatical errors, spelling errors. There were a lot of times a sentence didn't make sense in it, which I know that grammar and spelling isn't necessarily everything, but I just felt it really just threw the book off. It's a really short book, but I really felt like it could have been a much longer book and just been so much better. There was just so much extra pieces of information that I was just so anxious to hear and find out about, because it's about this girl whose brother goes missing. And now he's presumed to be dead, but she just absolutely does not believe that. She thinks that he's out there somewhere. And if he is dead, she wants to find him. So she starts retracing the steps that he took up until he was missing. And then as she does, she's starting to realize she's getting closer and closer to the truth, which is a great thing. But as she's getting closer and closer to the truth, she's then starting to realize that maybe she's getting a little bit more than she bargained for, or she should have asked for help along the way. But I just felt with as short as the book was, especially because the writing is really big as well. So although it's already short in and of itself, it's even shorter because the writing is just really, really big. I just felt there was just so many more pieces of information that I really, really needed for it to be just this knock it out of the park kind of book. So that just really fell flat for me. In February, I really only read 2 books, so yeah, but we'll talk about them. So number 1 is, my favorite one was It Ends With Us, which is by Colleen Hoover. I know Colleen Hoover is very, very, very controversial. I know a lot of people have things to say about her books. I do as well. First of all, It Ends With Us. I absolutely did enjoy that book because it does bring up the topic of domestic violence, and I think that's the way that she does it is very good, because anybody that can do domestic violence can be somebody that's so super successful, including a doctor, police officer, military, social worker, anybody like that can in fact do domestic violence. But I also think it's just kind of like one of those where it shows how hard it is for victims to leave, and how like the mind games or just things like that, where you're just kind of like, this makes a lot of sense as to why it would be so hard to leave. And then at the end, I was like, yes, congratulations, I'm so proud of you. Whereas the worst book was It Starts With Us. And honestly, I probably didn't really care that much for this book either way to begin with. I just felt like it was kind of unnecessary. I really liked where It Ends With Us left off, but I just felt like It Starts With Us. I know a lot of she wrote it because everybody else was like, well, what happens with these two? So she went on to write about it. But for me personally, it just wasn't my favorite. It wasn't my favorite book. It wasn't, it was just okay. It was all right. Definitely not my favorite. So in March, I read a lot of really good books. So my worst one was Such Good Boys, which is based on a true story of this mom who beats up one of her sons, does not care about her son. She seems to really care more about this other child, and he just exhibits a lot of anger. And the other child does see the abuse that goes on with his older brother, and there's some things that goes on with him as well. His mom is really mentally ill, and nobody does anything to help them. And then finally, the tragic event where they go and they murder their mother. I mean, that's the thing, is that month, all the books were so good. That one was probably just my least favorite, only because I feel like it was really hard to get a lot of information. I wanted to know why the caseworker didn't investigate into this, or police officers didn't investigate into this anymore. There was just a lot of questions that I had, but it was just so sad and so heartbreaking for those kids. And it was really heartbreaking that she had to lose her life as well. The whole story was just so heartbreaking. It was a really, really good book. But again, it was just my least favorite in comparison to the other ones that I read. But my most favorite was Baby Teeth. That book is that book was so good. It's about this girl, and she lives with her biological parents. It's not like she's adopted or anything, but she's never ever talked, and she's always just acted strange. And the mom has just taken her to countless appointments, and finally they're like, we just think it's behavioral. And so now the mom has to stay at home. The dad is working quite a bit, but she has to stay at home because she keeps getting kicked out of schools. She won't talk. But then the daughter is just starting to really give out really creepy, it's starting to act really creepy just when the mom is there, but acts like this great kid who doesn't talk, although the mom has heard her talk. And the dad just doesn't believe her, and it's I don't understand what's wrong with you, how you can be a mom and be talking about this, saying things about our kid. And the mom just feels so defeated. It was so good. And then just to see at the end and how it ends, when the mom and the daughter are talking on the phone, and what the mom says to the daughter, I would be so crushed to say that to my kids. And I know she did that with the best intentions, given what was going on. I know 1000% she did that with the best intentions, but it was just so heartbreaking. But then at the same time, it's kind of almost reminiscent of The Perfect Child, but just a little bit different. And I love books like that. It was so good. So then in April, my least favorite book was Tampa. I think for me, what really made this my least favorite book is this is a really graphic book. First and foremost, this talks about a adult predator on children, but it's a female teacher. And I think it's just so interesting to see from her point of view how she picks her victims and things like that. And then this book is based on an actual situation that happened with a teacher. It's not a nonfiction, but it's loosely based on her case, which is wild in and of itself. But I think that the one thing that really just like turned it off for me is I did not need the graphics of the intimate scenes with her and whoever else she was having, you know, whether that was adult, child, whatever the case may be. I did not need it to be that graphic when she was talking about her with children. I did not need it to be that graphic. We could have done without that. I did not need that wow factor for me personally, but I thought it was really good because she says, like, as a teacher, how she picks them, how she talks to them originally to see if anything will be said, to see how they respond, and then be able to tell if whether or not that's going to be like a good candidate for her, a good victim for her. It's wild. It's crazy, but I just did not need those scenes. And then my favorite from April is going to be the in-laws. This was really good. This threw me for a surprise, for a loop. This is where this couple's only child, son, comes with his wife, who he just married. They did not go to the wedding, did not care to go to the wedding, is how he portrayed it to the wife. And she gets there and she notices that the mom is just acting just like very strange, very weird. And the dad is as well. And she's like, what is going on? And finally she's like, I just need to make it till Sunday. Well, then Sunday comes because Saturday night, her husband had to go back into town, go to work. He's like, don't worry, I'll be home in a few hours. But he doesn't make it until late on Sunday. And then he realizes that his truck has flat tires and they can't get home. But then it slowly, like at the end, it starts, as all of this is happening, the truth is being unraveled as to what's really going on in that family. And the twist, I was not expecting that twist. I really thought it had something to do with the mom and dad, and it 1000% did and did not. And I was not expecting it. It was so good. So in May, my favorite book that I read was The Gift. Again, I only read like 3 books. So it was The Gift by Freda Mcfadden. This was a really short book. It was like 50 pages, something like that. It was so short, but it was just so jam-packed. It's about this lady who is working Christmas Eve at this little diner. It's this little family diner. Of course, you know, it's Christmas Eve. People with their families. But her husband is now a second-year law student, and so he left his job so he could really focus on law school. So she's a teacher, and she has to work at this giant diner. And it's their first Christmas, and she's really disappointed that she's not going to be able to purchase anything for him. But they had agreed, you know, no gifts. And then she gets a text, and the husband's like, hey, I've got something for you. I'm really excited to give it to you when you get home. So now she's like panicking, and she's freaking out about it. She's like, well, now that I'm going to get off late, I don't know where I can go to get gifts. There's this lady that's in the diner that's like, hey, I've got this like shop and I'm willing to make trades. So she goes there after, and she thinks she buys her husband like this greatest gift. And then when she gets home, so much unravels, and it's just like, as it's unraveling, now you see like where this lady came into play and why like the exchange was so important. And then you see like their relationship and what was really going on with it. And then you see what his gift was, which I was like, okay. That was your gift to her? That was what you were so like proud of yourself for doing? I feel like that should be a given since she's working 2 jobs and you're just going to law school. But okay. Anyways, that was my thoughts on that. And then my least favorite was The Cellar. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really well written. I think just for me, it was definitely one of those like, this could have been where you never find out what happens to her, but then it's like, oh, I guess we can't have that. So then it's almost like you know how it's going to end, which is sometimes disappointing because sometimes I just want to be thrown for a loop. And I just felt like with this one, I wasn't necessarily thrown for like a loop. But I really did enjoy like seeing the side of view from like the victim versus like the killer, like back and forth, and the detective that's working on the case. So I just really thought that like it was really well written. Out of all the books, I just felt like that ending was the most predictable. So for June, my least favorite book was going to be Watching You by Lisa Jewell. Listen, this book could have been so incredibly mind-blowing. I just don't know what it is about the ending that I was like, you got to be kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's how you chose to end it? With literally just being, with so much ambiguity. It never answered any of the questions that I had. It literally didn't answer any of the questions about the people that, like, the different viewpoints about this man, about the lady online who's freaking out. It doesn't talk about anything. It just doesn't, all of it is just left open to a mystery. And I was like, seriously? Like, that's it? Like, there's no answer? And there's no sequel or anything else like that. And I was just like, no. But that makes my favorite book. And this one was so hard because it was really between Go Ask Alice and Island of the Dolls. And shout out to Go Ask Alice because that is so good. That just shows a glimpse into the life of how this girl got addicted to drugs and like the different things that are going on through her mind. It's a true story. It's this girl's diary. All names have been, changed or kept confidential. And it just talks about like her struggle with drugs and how she got there. It was so good. So good. But I was going to give my favorite to Island of the Dolls by Jeremy Bates. It was so good. It had me feeling so many emotions. There was a mystery aspect. There was sadness to it. There was, like some like, oh, I'm really freaked out right now. Like what's going on? So there was just like a lot of elements from different books that I just like really like. And there was also some like folklore and like some history to it and some like truth to it. So it just like pulls together like a lot of different things that I like from books and all into one book. And it was just so well done. And I thought the ending was really good and also terrible at the same time. Like it was also really sad, but I thought that it was good. It was worth it. Jeremy Bates is one of my favorite authors and I don't feel like he gets enough hype, but that was a really good book. So in July, my favorite book is Kill Anything That Moves, the story of the real American War. This is 100% like a history book. I am not a huge history person, but this book, the way it was written, the amount of research that went into it, the amount of statements, the amount of documents, everything else that like poured into this book to really give you like the actual like whole entire picture of what went on during that war is just mind-blowing to me for a variety of different reasons. Just one, that we even allowed that to happen. Number one. Number two, that not only did we allow that to happen, but the amount of like covering up that we were going to do, how there was just not enough support for those coming back from the war, both by us as Americans, because, heaven forbid, like the government take any sort of like consequences for their actions. It was just so like revolutionary and just like mind-blowing to me. It was so well done. I absolutely enjoyed that. Whereas my least favorite was No One Rides for Free by Judah Sonnet. I thought that, it was okay. That one's definitely just like a lot of like gore and like WTF factor. Like that's kind of like the whole point of the book. It's definitely like a splatterpunk book where you're just there for like the shock factor of being like, wow, this is happening. What am I reading? And if those are things that you like, which don't get me wrong, I do enjoy. If those are things that you don't enjoy, you're not going to like this. If those things you do enjoy, you might like this. But it's about this mom who's taking her kids back to college. They're on the college choo-choo, not on the train. They're just driving there together. And she stops at this gas station and she gets some snacks and then she gets back in the car and they're driving and she decides she wants to take the scenic route instead of, where the most traffic is. And then realizes that there's a man in the back of her car holding guns to her kids' heads. How she did not notice, I don't know. Why she did not notice, I don't know. But now I'm going to check my back. I do check my back seat every single time now. But she was just like driving the scenic route. And then he makes them like stop and he starts having them do like these horrific things. And then like the ending comes and it was just like, wow. There wasn't really like a whole lot of a plot to it, really. It wasn't like a lot of like building up to the tragedy. There wasn't really a lot about this other guy's life or, the one that's like attacking them or like how he got there or like what his plans were. It was just basically like a lot of just like, oh, what WTF factor. So that's just why it was probably my least favorite. So in August, my favorite book was Hidden Pictures. Oh, that book was so good. That book is good. This is about this girl who is a ex-drug addict. She has been in NAAA meetings and she has been doing really, really well, has really turned her life around. So her sponsor gets her this job being this nanny for this little boy with her parent, with his parents. Wow. Kid's name is Teddy. One of the parents is like really into like IT business and the other one is a psychiatrist. And Teddy really just like loves her, like is instantly like attached to her, instantly feels this connection with her, absolutely loves her. So they're like bonding and he really likes to draw pictures. But then he starts like showing her these pictures and they're really creepy pictures. So she starts trying to ask more questions of him, but then she realized it starts getting like a little bit more sinister, a little bit more creepy. So she's trying to bring up her concerns to the parents. And the parents are like very, especially the mom is just like very like, this is just a normal appropriateness. He has like this imaginary friend. So he likes to draw her, just try to, distract him and like do other things. But then the pictures are starting to get like so good that you're like, there's no way this little boy is drawing these pictures. What is going on? But then a lot of other like crazy things start happening along the way as well. And so now like this babysitter, this nanny is trying to piece together what is happening in this house, who this imaginary friend is, where these pictures are coming from, why she's being sent these pictures, what she's needing to discover about these pictures. And it's just so, so good. Once the ending comes, I was like, wow, that's insane. That is absolutely insane. It was so good. And then it was just so sad too. At the very end when she goes back to see the little boy. And it's just almost like, just so sad for her. And I felt really sad. And then that makes my least favorite book is going to be Raised by a Killer, book number 8. These books are just so poorly done. I read 9 and 10, but at least 10 it finally ended. 9 wasn't the worst, but 8 definitely was the worst. Like these books could have had so much potential. The writing style is weird. The author literally says, this is through Deicide's point of view. And then Deicide talks about herself in the third person, or it's all the characters are talked about in the third person, but then it's italicized where it's like what Deicide is thinking. So why couldn't have all just been first person? I don't understand. That. It's just drives me insane. I don't get it. I just hate it. And then just the ridiculousness of where these books go. It was started out so good where it was like this dad is a serial killer and he uses his child to help wrangle in victims. And then he's also trying to teach her how to like keep the family secret while going to school and things like that. And like horrific things happen. So check trigger warnings or extreme horror novels. But then it like goes into this uncle shows up and like takes her to this cannibalism cult and all this crazy, like the craziest of crazy things happen. And then I'm just like, okay, all right, well, okay, all right. That's what we feel like we need to do. That's what we need to do. So that's going to leave the month of September. My favorite book, my top favorite book that I read in September was 19 Minutes by Jodi Picole. I have read this book numerous times. I think this is like my 7th time since I bought this book, reading it since it came out. Seriously, so good. That book makes me cry every single time I read it. There is no exception to it at all whatsoever. It was so good. And I will recommend that over and over and over again. It's about a teenager who is bullied relentlessly and he finally goes and like shoots up the school, and you just see like this from like so many different perspectives. You see it from like the detective's perspectives. You see it from the judge's perspective. You see it from the shooter's perspective, his parents' perspective. One of the girls that was like his best friend, but also kind of didn't want to be like him because he was picked on so much. So you see it from like her perspective. And just so many things just like happen in this book, and it made me cry, and it just left me to think so much, and it always does. Just chef's kiss a million times over, point blank period. It's amazing. Okay, I said what I said. It's amazing. So then that's going to leave my least favorite book. And honestly, this month I really enjoyed all of these books. It was really hard to pick a worst. But for the worst, I did pick A Welcome Reunion by Lucinda Berry, which is the second book. She has A Perfect Child, so you'd want to read that first in order for the second one to make any lick of sense. I'm telling you, you will be kind of lost. But I just thought that it was just like insane, and so just like a little bit outlandish, while also knowing that like these things can happen or could happen. But then the ending, I was just like, Piper, what are you doing? You know, like, what are you doing? And then I just kind of wanted to just, I like ask the parents, like, why you didn't do anything. I know you wanted to protect your son, but like at the same time, why didn't you do anything? You know, like, why didn't you do anything? Like, yeah, your son may have gotten in trouble, but that may have been like something that like he really needed to help him like get it together. You know, like sometimes the best thing we can do for our kids is we always want to like save them, and we always want to like protect them as our children, as our little angel babies. But sometimes I feel like that can be doing them such a disservice. And I feel like that's the case in this. But I mean, that's going to be really hard because of what they went through like in the first book and to now. I guess I don't know how I would react in that situation, but I thought it was still a good book. It was just probably my least favorite. That is talking about my favorite books that I read each month and my least favorite books that I read each month. Let me know what you guys think down below. What are some of your favorite books you have read this year? What are some of your least favorite books you have read this year? Even if you've only read 2 books this whole entire year, which one was your most favorite? Which one was your least favorite? Let me know all that down below. Don't forget, if you enjoyed, that you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you guys have subscribed so you guys can be notified of all my future book and makeup uploads. And I will see you all in my next one. Bye.